I saw in the night visions. This is from Daniel 7 again. Remember the passage that was really important, the two powers theology of Judaism? Behold, upon the clouds of heaven there came one like a son of man. There came a human one. And he came to the Ancient of Days. And to him there was given glory and dominion and everlasting, back to Daniel 7. The human cloud rider is distinct from the Ancient of Days, but yet the cloud rider is a way we talk about Yahweh. Now he's talking about somebody else the same way. Let's do the math. The writer probably thinks that the one like a son of man is also a deity figure, because we all know where that language comes from and how it's used in the rest of the Old Testament. Again, this is not a mystery to the first century view. And it really comes across, and it's not a mystery when Jesus is on trial, because Jesus quotes this passage. Then those who had seized Jesus led him to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the scribes and the elders had gathered. Again, they have this confrontation. And Caiaphas again gets impatient. He says, Jesus is silent. He says, I adjure you by the living God, tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus said to him, you've said so, but I tell you, from now on, you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. Now we look at that and read that, and we think, oh, Jesus is being cryptic, he's kind of twisted his Caiaphas' mind a little bit, maybe tweaking him a little bit, saying, you figure this out, Donnie. Oh, Caiaphas knows exactly what he's doing. And so does Jesus. He's saying, you want to know who I am? You want to know if I'm the Christ? I'm the Son of Man in Daniel 7. I'm the cloud rider. I'm the second deity in that picture. And what does Caiaphas do? The high priest tore his robes, gets it instantly, and says he has uttered blasphemy. Caiaphas knows his Bible really well. He's not scratching his head. He wants it dead now. What about the third person? What about the Spirit? If you have two-power thinking, again, two-ness thinking in your head, when you read other passages that talk about the Spirit, some of the two-power stuff will be used about the Spirit, bringing the Spirit into the conversation. So, again, if you're sensitized to it and you're reading certain passages, there will be, again, just little bells and whistles that go off in your head because of what the writer is doing. So you look here at Isaiah 63, I will recount the steadfast love of the Lord. Again, it's Lord is in all caps, it's the divine name, Yahweh. So we have Yahweh mentioned here. According to all that the Lord has granted us, so on and so forth, talking about, again, the house of Israel, the Israelite story. In all their affliction, he was afflicted. The angel of his presence saved them. In his love and in his pity, he redeemed them. He lifted them up, carried them all the days of the old. And this is a little bit of rehearsal of Israel's history, through the desert and all this stuff. So we get the Lord mentioned, we get the angel of his presence mentioned. But those naughty Israelites in the wilderness, they rebelled and grieved who? His Holy Spirit. And here's the kicker. If you look at the parallel passage to this in Psalm 78, rebelled and grieved, same Hebrew lemmas. Same two Hebrew words are these two words right here. How often they rebelled against him in the wilderness and grieved him in the desert. They tested God again and again and provoked the Holy One of Israel. You read these passages in tandem, it identifies the Spirit this time as God. And not only that, but we've got the angel of his presence there too. So you could read these texts, and Jews did. I mean, this isn't new to me. I didn't discover this. You could read these texts and go, okay, I got the two thing down, and now we got a third character. Number 3 going on here. Ezekiel 8. Writers will do the same thing. Ezekiel says, "Then I looked, and behold, a form," using the language of embodiment again, "a form that had the appearance of a man. Behold, or below what appeared to be his waist was fire, and above his waist was something like the appearance of brightness, like gleaming metal." Now that language comes from Ezekiel 1. Remember the weird wheel vision and all that stuff? God's on the throne, but he's describing it anthropomorphically there. So we get the same language. "He put out the form of a hand and took me by a lock of my head, and the Spirit lifted me up." Well, why would it be the man guy? Why wouldn't he be doing the lifting? Why is it the Spirit? "The Spirit lifted me up between earth and heaven, brought me in visions of God to Jerusalem." It takes him to Jerusalem. This is important. Okay, "Behold, the glory of the God of Israel was there, like the vision I saw in the valley. Then he said to me," and who's he? Is it the man, or is it the Spirit who lifted him up? "Son of man, lift up your eyes down toward the north." So I lifted up my eyes to the north. Again, he says, "What do you see?" And the speaker talks about driving me far from my sanctuary. Again, they're in Jerusalem. He's talking about a temple. So is it God? Is it God as a man? Is it the Spirit? And the answer really is yes. The writer is content with the ambiguity because, frankly, it really doesn't matter. They're all the same, but yet they're different. Yeah, you just run into passages like this. Elsewhere, Ezekiel recognizes his God is Yahweh and addresses him as Lord God. But yet he's a man, and the Spirit's the one picking him up. Wait a minute, does the Spirit have a hand? Is the Spirit anthropomorphic now, or is that God? And again, the answer is, well, why are you worried about it? They're all the same. Again, the language here is, this is all preparatory. When Jesus of Nazareth comes along, this is not new. No, the two powers issue is a lot more involved than this, as you can probably imagine. If you're a Jew reading your Hebrew Bible and you run into all this stuff that we just talked about, when the biblical period ends, you're wondering, well, who is the second power? Who is the second Yahweh? I mean, we had the angel, but we're in the land now. We had the exile, and God brought us back. Where is he? Who is he? So in between the Testaments, I have a whole hour lecture going through this stuff. This was part of my dissertation too. In between the Testaments, there were Jewish writers, very theologically with it. These aren't apostates and weirdos. Okay, they're just mainstream Jewish writers like Philo. Okay, speculating about who the second power was. And there were two categories. One category was, well, the second power may have been a glorified human, someone who was very special to God, that God elevated. Maybe it was Adam. Maybe it was Jacob. Because he would have died before the Exodus, and Jacob was really special. Or maybe it was Abraham, because he was called the friend of God. They had all this speculation, who was the second power. Moses was even a candidate, even though he was a contemporary of some of these passages. There are passages in Second Temple, that's intertestamental Jewish literature, where God says to Moses in heaven, "Would you like to sit on my throne? Have a seat." Okay. There are passages, again, texts, this is Jewish, these are Jews writing, that refer to a specific angel in heaven as Yah-ho-el. Two divine names given to an angel. There are Jewish texts that refer to the lesser Yahweh, the Adonai Katon. Akaton, to be technically correct. These are Jews. How in the world can they talk like this? Because they know the Old Testament. And they're just speculating. Another category was angels. Just mentioned Yahweh. Some thought the second power was Michael. Some said, no, we like Gabriel. We're voting for this guy. They just speculated. Well, when the Christians come along, and this became a heresy in the 2nd century AD, which is the 100s. a few decades after the events of the Gospels. When the Christians come along and they said, we'd like a write-in candidate. We think we know who the second power is. We think it was Jesus of Nazareth, who, by the way, you guys just killed. Now that was offensive. The second power doctrine is one of the things, again, scholars have written about this a lot, that drove a wedge between the early Christians who had come out of Judaism and the Jewish community, because it was so offensive to suggest that we killed the second power, that we wanted Caesar over the second power. That was just over the top for the Jewish community. So they declared it a heresy. They declared a point of their own theology a heresy. But they did two other things at the same time. They outlawed the use of the Septuagint. The Septuagint was the Greek translation of the Old Testament. It was the Bible of the early church, because most of the people in the early church were not Jews. As it grew, it incorporated masses of Gentiles who could not read Hebrew or Aramaic. So they used the Septuagint because everybody could read Greek. Well, there are passages in the Septuagint that are just not very friendly to an anti-second power idea. I'll give you my favorite, Isaiah 9. Everybody knows Isaiah 9 because of Handel's Messiah. Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Prince of Peace. Septuagint doesn't say any of that. The Septuagint says that he shall be called the messenger of the great council. Really? A messenger is angelos. He shall be called the angel of the great council. We just don't want people reading that. So the Septuagint became off limits. And the third thing they did was they standardized the Hebrew text. Now what we know as the traditional Hebrew text, the Masoretic text, was actually created around 100 AD, beginning of the 2nd century. Because their textual situation, and we know this from the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls have at least 3 different textual traditions of the Hebrew Bible, and then there's a whole pile of what scholars call unaffiliated texts that don't belong to the other 3. So there's at least 4 versions, and probably a dozen, whatever, versions of the Hebrew Bible. It's kind of like today. We have all these translations of the Bible in English. So what they did was, you know what? We're getting rid of the Septuagint, the two powers thing, that's off limits now. We're going to take all of these Hebrew text traditions, all these Hebrew Bibles, and we're going to get together, we're going to produce one standard text that will become our text from here to forever. And we're going to have the Masoretes, a professional class of scribes, perpetuate this text from here to eternity. And that's what they did. That's why you get texts like in Deuteronomy 32:8-9 that say sons of Israel instead of the Dead Sea Scrolls saying sons of God. Because they took steps in certain passages to eliminate divine plurality. And I'm not painting them as villains. What do you expect them to do? They're losing lots of people to this crazy belief system called Christianity. They're circling the wagons. They're protecting their tradition. This is what you would expect them to do. But this is the result. And we know that they did this. Why? Because there are people like a guy named Abdowitzer, who was a German rabbinic scholar, who collected variations within the Masoretic text tradition that people, rabbis, kept using even after textual standardization. They like their own version. That's what would happen today if some committee in the sky said, we're getting rid of all the English translations, we're going to have one. You keep the one you like. And so would your pastor. That's what they did. It's just this guy, that was his scholarly mission in life, to collect the variations within the Masoretic text tradition. Just to have them, just to collect them. It's a multi-volume work in German that no one's ever going to read. But it's there. Okay, it's there. He did the work. And, God bless him for doing it. What you think of as the traditional Hebrew text, there is no one traditional Hebrew text. That's a myth. There's a community text, the Masoretic text, that we today can justifiably say this is the one we really find evidence of, used everywhere throughout the Middle Ages. But these are the historical conditions as to why that is. You will get Dead Sea Scroll readings that disagree with the traditional Hebrew text. Again, it's just history. That's all it is. And there are scholars who devote their lives to collecting these things and collating them, putting them into journal articles and nice little databases, so that anybody who wants the information can get it. That's a little bit of a rabbit trail. But again, the two powers thinking, this is part of the biblical worldview. Christianity did not invent the Trinity.